Hi, welcome to this workshop. In this particular video, we're going to be looking at drawing trousers and very specifically jeans. Following the blazer video that I made where I used an image taken from the fabulous website Outnet. I use Outnet because their photography is great, and they also have an incredible range of great clothing to pick from. And I picked a pair of jeans to copy, and you can see this is my rendering of those jeans. Now, I'm going to show you from scratch how we made these, so I'm going to go through absolutely everything. So this might be quite a long video by the time it's done, because I'm going to be showing you how I made the button, how I made the rivet, bar tacks, the top stitch, and you can see here that I've got these faded areas here, and also this little distressed patch which mimics this as well. So I'm going to go through the whole thing. Also, how to create a repeat pattern using a found sample from the internet. So I just found a little piece of denim texture, and I've made that into a seamless repeat pattern using Photoshop as well. So I'm going to go through the whole thing here. So if I'm doing stuff that you know, you can always scooch on a bit. If there's something specific that you want to know, then by all means run ahead. I just want you to know from the outset that those things are included in this video. So it's a good one to do, because you'll learn a lot, or you can just pick out the pieces that you want. So I'm going to start off. I've got this image, as I say, I've taken it from Outnet. I'm going to go back to my blank templates. The first thing I need to do is I need to position my image on my template. Now I've already created some layers here, so I'm going to put this this layer here. It's called jeans layer. That's slightly ambiguous. I'm actually going to draw my jeans on this layer. So this image, which I've currently got selected, and you can see it's highlighted here in the layers panel. So I'm just going to drag this down onto where it says image layer. So you can see that the highlight color is now green to match that layer, and it sits behind my my template. So I can just push it into the place where I want it to sit on my mannequin. So I'm just going to more or less center that up like so. So that's about right. I could just nudge it in, make it a little bit narrow. I didn't do this on the other drawing, but I'm just going to make it fit a little better. Now the mannequin, it doesn't matter if the legs don't follow, because the mannequin is drawn with these kind of very straight up and down legs. So the fact that these taper in is better. I do actually have another drawing of my mannequin with a skin tight line on. If you're one of my students from the University of Manchester, you'll have access to that. I currently don't. I'm in isolation due to the coronavirus. So that puts puts a date on this. I mean, it's March 2020. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you're fitting well, and if you're watching this in the future, hopefully that virus thing has gone away and it's nothing but a dim and distant memory. So anyway, let's crack on. So first things first, I'm going to just change something about this image layer. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to just dim the images, and I'm also going to lock this in place like so. So you can see now that this is locked and this is kind of dimmed down, so I can see more or less where I need to be drawing. I'm going to draw most of this with no fill, so I can continue to see the image underneath that I'm going to be copying. This is a great technique when you're learning to draw things, because it helps you understand how the garment is supposed to look, and how it's going to pan out in the end. So first things first, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so I can see the trousers or the jeans. I'm going to start with the pen tool, and I'm going to start up here on, this is like a low waist rather than a high hip. So slightly low waist, this would be a high waist, this is a low waist, mid waist. And I'm just going to make sure I'm on the right layer. So I've gone to my jeans layer, and then I can click here, and then I'm going to click just here on the thigh. Now the line that I'm drawing is, I've used this pink colour, maybe I need to change that highlight colour so you can see this better. I'm going to go for a nice bright kind of bluey purple so you can see that standing out easier. There we go. So you can see how I'm drawing this. So I'm just going to come and just put a point in here. I'm not going to add any curves. It's much easier to add the curves later. So I'm just going to click there for now. And then I'm going to come in to this point on the knee, like so. And then I'm going to kick out to here. And then I'm going to come straight across, like so. And then up here to the knee again. And then up here. Now there's a little bit of a thigh gap going on. Like so. So you can see I've drawn that very, very straight. If I hit return, it'll stop drawing. And you can see I've got a white fill on this open path. So I'm just going to take that white fill off, like so. And then I'm going to switch the tool to the anchor point tool. Now that lives with the pen tool, okay? You can also access it using keyboard shortcut of Shift-C. And I'm just going to add a little curve in here. So I get this nice curve over the hip. And then I'm going to add a curve here, like so. And then I'm just going to pull this down to add a curve onto the bottom, and then I'm pulling up to add a curve up here, and I need to just refine this a little bit, so move that in like so and add a curve here. Oops, pulled the wrong way. And a little curve going on there. I can tie that in a knot. There we are, that's better. And I'm just going to refine that a tiny bit just by pulling that in like so. So that's half of the main body of my drawing completed. So what I'm going to do now, as long as I'm happy with all the curved shapes, is I'm going to select the whole thing. So I'm going to deselect it. I've switched the tool up to the selection tool, that's the black arrow. Keyboard shortcut is V. And then I'm going to use the reflect tool, which lives here. Keyboard shortcut is O. And I'm positioning my cursor on the blue center line, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard, making sure I'm absolutely on that center line, and then I can just click. And you can see it's flipped my line over because I'm reflecting across the vertical axis here, and I'm previewing so I can see where it's going to go. Now I don't want to just reflect over, I need to make a copy, so I just click the copy button like so, and there's the basic outline of my jeans. Now at the moment these are two separate lines and I can't leave it like that. I need them to be joined together. So I want them to be joined in two places, just here and across the waistband. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and I'm going to select the other line So holding down the Shift key allows me to do multiple selections, and then I'm just going to right click my mouse. It was two-finger gesture on my my trackpad, and then I'm going to choose to join. Okay, so I've joined, so that's put a little join in here, and then if I do the same thing again, it'll join across the waistband like so. And that's the first part of this exercise completed. We've got the basic outlines of our jeans. Okay, next we're going to put some detail on our jeans. I'm going to start off by adding the waistband. To do this, I'm just going to use the pen tool. I'm going to draw a line straight across. I'm going to start just slightly over the edge, like so. And hit return to stop drawing. I'm going to add a little curve onto this line just so as it follows the image underneath the shape of the waistband. Something like that. I'm also going to add, even though it doesn't really show in this picture, a little bit of shape along the top there, just so we've got a little bit of a curve going on. Just help the appearance of the illustration when it's finished. I'm going to select the outline, and I'm going to shift select the new line that I've drawn, and then I'm going to use Pathfinder. I'm going to use divide, and then right click and ungroup. I'm going to use that technique as well to make the pockets. So to draw the pockets, again using the pen tool, I'm going to start about here, and I'm going to draw straight across to this point here. Hit return to stop drawing, and I'm going to use the anchor point tool to add the shape in there like that. So I might need to just adjust my points. So this is now a little bit low, so I can pick this up, move it. There we go. So just adjust that so it looks like the line of the pocket. Then I'm not going to cut this yet. I'm going to flip it over so I've got a exact mirror on the other side. Now obviously this is a photograph of a real garment underneath, so it's not going to be technically perfect. There's all sorts of things that could change it from perfection, from how it's constructed, how it's been put together, to how it's been photographed. So, but we're going to make a near perfect drawing of the garment because this is a technical flat and that's how it should look. So I'm going to choose the reflect tool. I've got my line selected. Make sure you've selected it using the selection tool, that's the black arrow. If I hold down the Alt key and click on this center line to get my dialog box, I need to reflect across the vertical axis and then choose copy. So I've got a copy of the line on the other side. Now you can see what I mean about it not being perfect. It's not sitting perfectly on top of the image, but I don't really care about that. I just want my drawing to be as perfect as possible. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to cut these away yet. I'm going to cut my waistband though. So back to the pen tool, and again I'm just going to draw a line here like so, and deselect and reselect the line, hold the shift key and select the waistband, and then use Pathfinder divide, right click and ungroup. There we go. So there's my waistband divided up. I'm going to put in I'm just trying to think what I should do next. I think I will divide my pockets up now. So I'm going to select my pocket line and the outline of the jeans, like so, and use divide again. It's just the same technique over and over, so I'm not going to talk through every single step, because you know what I'm doing. There we go. So there's my, my pockets divided up. I'm not going to add this little stamp pocket until later, because I need to finish my pockets in a second. I'm just going to add the stitch line for the fly. This isn't going to be cut, it's just a drawn in line. Like so. And I'm going to divide up my trousers. Now I know I stitched them together, or I joined them together, but I'm going to divide it again. This is really just to ensure that the pieces are fitting together properly and closed paths. Remember, you can't fill an open path successfully, so this is just to ensure that we don't end up with problems with fills later, which is why I joined the two halves of our original jean together. Jean, I always swore I'd never say that. It's a pair of jeans, isn't it? There we go, so there's my line. And the outline again, and choose divide, right click and ungroup. So there we go. So now I've got one leg or one side of my jeans is separate from the other, which means I can treat them separately. Now I'm going to just get this stitch line going on my my jeans pocket. So I'm going to just select this line. Now I'm using the direct selection tool. That's important because I don't want to select the whole path. I just want to select this line segment between these 2 points here. So I've just clicked here and I'm going to copy it. So I'm using Control or Command C. I'm using a Mac, so it's Command, and then I'm going to paste in front, Command F or Control F, and now you can see I've got a brand new line just sat here. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go to the Object menu, choose Path and Offset Path. And you can see here I've set up an offset of 1.5 millimeters, which is just about right to give me this line. You can also see I've got this line as well because it offsets all the way around an open path. Now I don't want this part, so I'm just going to delete that. So I just need to click OK, and then I'm going to select the bits that I don't want and just press backspace to delete them. And then this was the original line that I created. I don't need that anymore, okay? So I've just deleted it, and I'm not closing a path or anything like that. I could do, if I wanted this to look like binding, I could join these those two paths together to make a little bound edge, but I'm not going to do that. So there's my my line. I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. I could, if I wanted to, just flip this over. In fact, that's probably the quickest way of doing it. So I've just selected with the selection tool this time, and then I'm choosing the reflect tool and holding the Alt key, click on that blue center line like so, and click copy, and then we've got our line on the other side. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm going to create my belt loops. These are just basically rectangles. These belt loops on this particular pair of jeans, they're weird, they're quite long. So I'm just going to create a longish rectangle like so. And I'm just going to rotate it into position. So I'm going to use the rotate tool. I need to do this by eye, so I'm not going to use the Alt key and click. I'm just going to put my point of origin down. So I'm going to anchor it here, if you like. So it's like sticking a pin in, just there. Can you see where that little crosshair is? And then I'm just going to pick up this end here and just rotate that into position. Once I've got the angle about right, I'm going to deselect and then reselect that shape, and then I'm going to go back to my rotate tool. You can use keyboard shortcuts if you like. Keyboard shortcut for rotate, for reflect is O, which is an odd one. Hold down the Alt key and click and copy. So now I've got 2 belt loops. It all looks a little bit weird at the moment because I've got no fills on here. This is only so I can maintain visibility down to this picture layer. But I'm going to start filling soon. So I'm going to put my, my little stamp pocket in now. So I'm going to draw like that, hit return, stop drawing, and I need to make sure I'm picking up, because obviously this is all divided up, so depending on where you click you might pick up a different shape, so be mindful of what you're picking up. Hold the shift key and pick up that new line and use divide. Right click and ungroup, and so now I have my little stamp pocket as a separate shape. There we go. Okay, so they're all the major shapes cut and all the things that I need in place. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to deviate slightly and show you how to make a repeat pattern in Photoshop using a found fabric swatch. So we're going to make a denim repeat pattern. Now there's lots of different ways of doing this, so I'm just going to hop into Photoshop. So we could take something like this. This was just found on the web. So whoever owns this, I thank you. Little piece of pale blue denim. And first of all, we need to check, because sometimes you find things on the web and they're already set up as perfect repeats. And you can test that really easily in Photoshop. If you go to Filter and go to Other right at the bottom and choose Offset. If I set that back to 0, you can see what's going on. So there it looks okay, but the minute I slide the bar across, you can see that we've got an issue here, and the issue is really more to do with colour. This is not going to repeat very well at all. Okay, we're always going to be able to see that colour change. So what we're looking for is something that's far more evenly coloured across and up and down. So if I, there we go. So you can see this would look very, very patchy, and it's not worth trying to turn this into a repeat pattern. There are always other images that will work better. Let me have a little look. I'll just cancel that. Okay, so let's try this one. So go to Offset. This is much easier. Okay, you can see here, this is where the repeat happens. I can see that a little bit. Let's see what happens when I move vertically. And I can see that slightly as well. Now we can disrupt those lines so it becomes less of a grid, if you like. Because we're working on a rectangle, it will look quite gridded when we turn this into a repeat if we don't do anything about it. So I'm just going to work in one plane at a time. So let's set these back. Okay, so this is the line I need to disrupt. It's very subtle, so I'll do this first. So if I zoom in, you can see a little bit of what we've got to deal with. So it's just a question of either smoothing this out to make it more perfect or disrupting it with different kinds of textures and patterns. So I'm just going to use the clone stamp tool, and I'm going to pick up and just do something like that. Okay, so we're just going to break this up. So I'm going to take this line and follow it up. Okay, so we don't want to make anything, it doesn't matter if you leave the odd bit, it's just so the eye doesn't naturally see where that break is. That's all we're doing, is we're just upsetting that line a little bit. So I'm going to take this bit, and this bit here. Okay, and then once I've done that, I go back to filter, go to other and offset, set that back to 0, go to vertical and just run that down so I can see the vertical issue, slightly worse vertically. So let's see exactly the same technique. So I'm going to pick that up here, move it up to here. And then I'm going to pick this piece up here. Okay, and then maybe this bit here. And we just carry on until that line is properly disrupted. Now you will see a little bit of a repeat pattern, but you want it to be a seamless kind of repeat. You don't want to see a grid. So don't worry if that's the thing, but we just want to get rid of that kind of very squared off grid shape. So now this can become our pattern. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole thing and I'm going to copy it. So Command or Control C, and then we can just pop straight back into Adobe Illustrator. Now it's going to come in pretty big compared with my drawing, so I'm just going to paste it there. There we go. And I'm going to scale this down so it's already a reasonable size. How's that looking? Yeah, I think we can live with that. So this is going to be the size of my my denim texture, maybe a tiny bit smaller. And then we go to the Object menu in Illustrator and we go to Pattern and choose Make. And it will automatically add it to the swatches panel, so I click OK. And I'm going to call this one Chambray Blue. There we go. Now, because it's already set up as a repeat, don't choose a different tile type. Just leave it set up as a grid. And when you're happy, all you have to do is click above this blue line here. And when I have a look down here, my new pattern, let's just have a look at this as a list. I'm going to go for a large list view. There we go, Chambray Blue. I don't need this anymore, so I can actually delete it. And I'm going to select one leg of my jeans, and let's find my Chambray Blue. There we are. and then I can continue to add now. Once I've added one little shape, I don't need to keep going back to my swatches. I can just use the eyedropper tool. Keyboard shortcut for the eyedropper is very conveniently just the letter I. So I can just continue. So V for my selection tool, I for the eyedropper, V for selection, I for the eyedropper. Oops, a daisy. There we go. Now, the thing with this is, just hold on one second, I'm just going to select all these other pieces. There we are, that's a much easier way of doing it. There we go. So I've coloured my jeans in, but you'll notice that the direction of the weave, if you like, is flowing in the same direction for every single piece, which gives it a very fake look. So what we can do is we can select the shapes. If we go to the object menu, we can choose transform and rotate. And now we don't want to rotate the shape because you can see what's happened here. What we want to do is just transform the pattern. So I'm going to uncheck where it says transform objects. Okay, and then we can just rotate the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to do the same here. Looks okay. And then for the waistband, rotate. And then I can eyedropper that like so. So there we go. Now I've also I've just noticed that my my little line that for the fly has ended up behind the leg of my jeans. So I need to just find that again. The easiest way to do it is I'm just going to lock the leg of my jeans, then I can select it because I know it's there. I'm just going to cut that and paste in front like that. And let's see how we are doing. Okay, so you can see we've got a nice denim-y texture going on here. But there were a few things about those jeans, and I'm just going to move the image layer. So I'm going to unlock it, and I'm just going to shift this, pick it up and move it. So now I'm copying rather than tracing. So you can see we've got this little worn patch on the knee, and we've got some rivets and we've got some stitch lines and things. So I'm going to carry on putting this together. Also some fade marks, all right, and some like wear marks on these jeans. So we're going to have a little look in the second movie how to do the fade marks, but we're going to just work on this little patch first of all. So I might just work directly on top of this just to get it looking accurate. So I'm going to start off with a pen tool, and I just need to make sure I'm working on the right layer. I'm just going to lock my layer down again, go back to my jeans layer, and I'm going to just roughly draw this shape. Now the line thickness is too heavy, so I'm going to go to my stroke menu and show options. I want a rounded cap and corners on this line. I also want it to be much thinner, so I'm going to take my line weight down to 0.25, like so. And I want it a bit more raggedy looking. So I'm going to use an effect. I'm going to use Distort and Transform, and I'm going to roughen this, okay? And we can control how this looks. So I want this much rougher. Okay, but I want my size to be smaller, so let's just see. Okay, so I think that looks okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I've selected it again with the selection tool, and I'm just going to copy it, and I'm not doing anything else. I've just copied that shape, and you'll see what I'll do with it in a minute. Next I'm going to choose the pen tool, and I'm going to choose a nice kind of chambray blue colour, quite light, like that. Oh, I didn't want that to be on the outside of there, so I need to deselect, so I need to reselect that colour. And then with the pen tool, I'm going to zigzag across, but I'm going to overshoot the edges of the shape. Don't have to be particularly careful about this. So I'm just zigzagging backwards and forwards. So these are going to be my threads. Okay, and hit return to stop drawing. Now what I'm going to do, because I've already copied the whole shape, I'm going to paste in front, and then using the selection tool, I'm going to reselect those scribbly lines like that, and go to Object and make a clipping mask. Okay, and then I can select that, and I'm just going to lock it temporarily, and then pick up this line, and I'm going to cut it and paste in front, like so. So now we've got our thread lines and the hole, and all I need to do is add in some little broken threads, and I'm going to do that using the pencil tool. The pencil tool lives here just underneath the brush. Okay, it lives with all these other tools, so if you can't see it, you might need to go looking for it. Keyboard shortcut for the pencil tool is just the letter N. So here's my pencil tool. I'm just going to unlock, and I've just selected that just basically so I can get this this light blue colour back again. So back to the pencil, and then I can just scribble in some little broken threads. You'll see this a bit better once we put it on top of our don't have to make it exactly the same. There we go. So I'm going to just select the whole thing and group it. Now I might want to use that again, and if I wanted to do that, I could make it into a symbol. So I could just drag this and drop it there, and I'm going to call it worn patch 1, because you might make several. There it is. So if I wanted to use that again, I could literally just drag it from my symbols panel there. So let's just zoom out a bit. And pop it over here like that. Okay. I might need to change the colour of that blue. It might need to go a little bit paler actually, but for now it will do. Now I'm going to add the button on my jeans. So I found an image. I thought I'd make these into a pair of Armani jeans. So I found a little Armani button online, and I've just basically selected it and dropped away the background, and I saved this out as a PNG file. The reason I've saved it as a PNG file is because I can import that into Illustrator, and there will be no background. Okay, so if I go to place, if only I could remember where I'd left the button. I might just have to bring it back in again from Photoshop. I could just copy it, I suppose. There we go. You can see it's come in a little on the large side, so I'm just going to scale it down so it's proportionate with my jeans. Again, I can use my my image of the jeans to get the scale right. So again, just helps to zoom in. So that looks okay for scale. And then I can just pick that up and move it over here like that. And again, if I wanted to, I could just drag that into my symbols panel. I'll call it Armani button, or Armani jeans button. There we are. And again, you can look at these as a list, so you can see what things are called. So there's my my button in place. I'm now going to add some stitch lines. So we're going to have these little stitch things. The first thing I need to do is create a twin needle top stitch. Now, it's always a good idea to create your brushes proportionate with your drawings. I'm just going to change all my strokes so they're rounded. I just noticed they were a little bit sharp. There we go. So I'm going to create this using the line segment tool. So the line segment lives just here. If you're not sure what your tools are called, if you just hover over them, it will show you the name. So I'm going to make a tiny, tiny, tiny little stitch line. It's only going to be 1 point long. Now, a point is a lot smaller than a millimetre, so don't think, oh, I'll make it 1 millimetre. A millimetre is gigantic. 1 point, there are 72 points to an inch, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. Make sure that the angle says 0 degrees. And there's my line. Now, the problem with this line is it's a 1 point thick line, so it's a little bit on the chubby side. So we're just going to take the weight down to 0.25 in the stroke panel. Okay, some people like their stitch lines to be a bit thicker than that. That's okay. I prefer not to. I think your illustrations just look finer if the stitch lines aren't too thick. Plus also this is going to be a double needle top stitch, so it's going to be like in parallel, and if it's too thick it just looks like a really fat line, so I'm not going to do that. So now I've got the idea of how big this is going to be. I can zoom right in, and just make another one. Now how I did that, I'll just do that again because I didn't explain what I was doing. I'm just dragging this down, and as I'm dragging I hold the Alt key. Now when you hold the Alt key you'll notice that your cursor splits into two arrows. That's basically telling you that you're going to make a copy, and by holding the Shift key, at the moment I can move anywhere at all, but the minute I hold the Shift key you'll notice that the line is constrained to move either vertically or horizontally or at a 45-degree angle. Okay. So I'm going to select both of those lines. I just drag selected across the top, go to the brushes panel, and we're going to make a new brush. And this is a pattern brush we're making. So I click OK, and I'm going to call this twin needle top stitch. And the spacing, we need some space between. I'm going to go for 50% spacing. I'm also going to add a colorization method. Now, if you don't do this, whatever color you've made your brush, that's what color it will always be. So my brush has started out in black, so that's the key color. So anything that's this color, by using this coloration method, it will change. So I'm going to use tints, okay, like so. So this is now my brush. You can see it here, and I'm just going to test it. And that's how it's going to look. Now, when we change the stroke color, you can see, because I'm using that coloration method of tints, we can change the black original to whatever color we want. Okay, so now I need to add some parallel lines. Now we've done this already on this exercise. We're going to add a parallel line on our waistband, but that's only going to be a single line. We want a double twin needle top stitch here and on this line as well. So I'm just going to go around and add those stitches now, but to keep them in parallel, oops, I need to select the line. Okay, so this is the line I want to select, like so. So I'm going to go to the object menu, choose path and offset path. I don't want it to be offset quite that much, so maybe 1.5 points. Let's see what that looks like. So I need to make sure I put in PT, otherwise it will assume that I'm using millimeters. Okay, and let's put that in like that. Now I need to get rid of the stitch lines that I don't want. So I don't want the stitches to be there. There we go. And I want these jeans to have a kind of classic orange stitching. So I'm going to change my stroke colour to a nice deep orange, like so. You can make your stitches any colour you like. Okay, and I'm going to do the same. I think I'll use this line. So I need to make sure that the whole line is selected, so I'm going to use the selection tool, and same thing again, offset path, and add the stitches. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to select that colour to make sure I have continuity throughout my drawing. I'm just going to zoom in. I only want the stitches to appear here, not here. There we go. And I could just flip this stitch line over rather than repeat that process. So we've done this before. There we go. And I'm just going to put a line across here, like so. Line down there. There we are. Now, on my belt loops, I don't want the twin needle. I just want a single line of stitches. So I'm going to go to the path, offset path again. Now I don't want to make my belt loop bigger, I need to make it smaller, so I need to make sure this is a minus number. So I'm going to type in -1 PT and see what that looks like. That looks about right. I know it looks really thick at the moment, but it won't do when I'm finished. So I'm just going to click OK. This time, rather than making a brush, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to change the weight of my stroke to 0.25, and I'm going to use a dashed line. The dashed line length is going to be 1 point, so I'm going to type 1 PT in there, and I'm going to change this so the dashes align to the corners and path ends, like so. It just looks a lot neater, and I can still use that same orange. Now, the minute I click this, it's going to make my line not dashed and much thicker again. Which isn't what I want. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make this orange colour a swatch so I can access it from the swatches. So I'm just going to drag that in there. So I'm going to call it orange stitch colour. I might just drag it up to the top so I don't have to. You can actually, if it's unused, if you haven't used a swatch, you can actually delete all these. So we might do that in a second. So I'm just going to go back and change my my stitch line again. Make it dashed. There we are. And I'm going to do the same thing again on this one. I'm going to show you again. Path, offset path, -1 point. It's obviously converted it to millimeters, so don't worry about that. That is 1 point. And click OK. And again, I don't need to go through that palaver. I can just eyedropper so it looks the same. Now I'm going to make a little bar tack for a reinforcement stitch. So I'm going to have a bar tack at the top and the bottom of my stitch line. So I'm going to just put a little line here, and I'm going to use an effect. I'm going to use another distort and transform, this time it's ZigZag. You can see it's a bit much. I don't want it to be a dash line. We'll change that in a second. I need it to be much smaller than it is. So maybe 2 points. And I need to change the number of ridges per segment. Maybe 0.5 point or 1 point would do. Yep, that looks okay. And I click OK. I'm going to take the dash off. So that's my little bar tack there. I'm going to reflect that into the same place. Oops, need to make sure you've got the whole thing selected. So just deselect and reselect using the selection tool. Hold the Alt key, click on that line and click copy. Okay, and then rather than redraw those at the top, I'm just going to drag, copy them up here and then just move them into a new location. Like so. There we go. So there's my, my little bar tacks. Now I'm going to add a single stitch line onto my waistband. I want one top and bottom, so I'm going to select that whole shape. Again, I don't need to create a brush for this, it's just a simple dash line. And oops, a daisy, I need to make sure I offset the line first. So object, path, offset path. There we go. And then do the same thing on the other side. Object, path, offset path. And then using the eyedropper to pick up. Now, I've got stitches down here which I don't need, so I'm just going to select that part of the line segment using the direct selection tool and just delete those like so. So now I've just got stitches where I actually want them. Okay, so that's what my jeans look like so far. Now I'm going to add my my little fade patches and just finish these off. So how I do this is I use an ellipse shape, and you can make the ellipse quite large. I'm going to start here. Like so. And just position it on one leg. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a gradient. Now, the thing with the gradients, you can have a coloured gradient, or you can have gradients between a colour and transparency. So I'm going to start off with this black and white gradient. Oops, got the I need to make sure I've got the fill selected first. So there we go. So there's my my gradient is selected. Let's find my gradient again over here. So I've got my black and white gradient, and you can see it goes black to white. I need it to be a radial gradient like this, and I don't want it going from black to white. I want it to go from transparent. Okay, so I'm going to change this black colour to white, so it goes white to white, but I want the opacity down to 0. Okay, and then I want the opacity at the other end to be around maybe about 40%, something like that. You can fiddle around with this until you get a look that you're happy with. Then we can change everything we want about this gradient. We can change the direction. So I'm going to go top to bottom like this. And I'm going to squash the sides in by pulling here. Okay. Just going to pull this down so it fits. I need to make sure it stays inside the ellipse. Like so. So I can run that out like that. So I've actually, what I'm doing there by pulling that is I'm actually sliding this, the gradient slider. So I've got more colour before it fades away to absolutely nothing at the end here. Okay, so that just gives the illusion that the jeans are just a little bit worn there on the thigh. Okay, I've also got an orange stroke on there. Can you see that orange stroke? So I just need to select that and make sure that that's removed. Okay, and when I'm happy with that, I can just hold Alt and Shift to copy and drag that over, like so. And I can continue to do that. You'll notice that these, this pair of jeans has got these kind of worn lines. So I could continue to make little ovals with this fill-in to give the illusion of wear. Okay, so I'm going to carry on and do that. Okay, so there's another one done. So I could just flip that over. And copy it. And I could continue to use these and just change. I don't want to make them too perfect. There we go. So that's my jeans just about finished. I could put some little frayed threads on the bottom. I'm just going to change the colour of this thread line. It's an easy way of selecting these. I'm just going to go for same stroke colour. There we are. And I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. There we are. So that looks a bit better. And I'm just going to add some little scribble threads hanging off the bottom. I'll need to make these darker because the illusion will be much the same. So there we go. There we go. So I think that's pretty much it. There's our jeans completed. And that's that. Thanks for watching.